Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight's story explores one of the world's most mysterious locations, Area 51, and the terrifying possibility that the military didn't restrict access to hide aliens, but to contain something far worse. Let's begin. I used to think the hardest part of exposing the truth would be proving it existed. Turns out, the hardest part is living long enough to tell people what you found. My name is Alex Carter. 3 months ago, I led a group of 4 people into the Nevada desert to break into Area 51. At the time, it felt like the biggest moment of my life. Now it feels like the moment I started something that should have remained buried. The 4 of us had been planning the expedition for almost a year. I ran the channel. Conspiracies, classified programs, leaked documents, anything the public wasn't supposed to know about. The audience loved it, but outside the internet I was just another guy people laughed at when they heard the word Area 51. So when the leaks started appearing in late 2024, I knew this was different. Not the usual grainy photos or anonymous forum posts. These were fragments of internal documents, redacted research logs, references to something called Project Echo. At first, it sounded like another military AI project. But the deeper we looked, the stranger it became. Echo wasn't designed to run weapons systems. It wasn't designed for surveillance. It was built to translate something. That alone would have been enough to get my attention. But the final leaked document changed everything. One line, buried under pages of classified formatting. Signal remains active. Human cognition continues to degrade after prolonged exposure. A signal. That was when the idea started. If something inside Area 51 was transmitting, we needed to see it. That's how the 4 of us ended up driving through the desert at 2 in the morning. Mike sat beside me in the passenger seat, staring out the windshield at the empty black highway. He had the instincts of a real journalist, which meant he didn't believe in any of this, but he believed in proof. "You still think this is a good idea?" he asked. "If we're right," I said, "this is the biggest story in human history." Mike shook his head slowly. "Or it's 4 idiots getting arrested on federal land." Behind us, Mia was typing on her laptop, its glow lighting the inside of the car. She had already spent months studying satellite maps and security patterns around the base. "I'm telling you," she said without looking up. "There's a blind zone along the northern ridge. Cameras overlap wrong. Military upgrades created a gap." Lisa leaned forward from the back seat. "And you're certain the gap still exists?" "As certain as anyone can be about classified infrastructure." Lisa had joined the expedition for a different reason than the rest of us. She was a historian, obsessed with old military archives and Cold War research programs. When she read the Echo files, she found references to experiments dating back far earlier than anyone expected. Some of them mentioned strange encounters in the Nevada desert as early as the 1950s. Others were older still. She believed something had been discovered long before Area 51 officially existed, something the base was built around. About 20 minutes later, the road ended. The desert opened around us in every direction, a flat ocean of dark sand and distant hills. We parked the car behind a rocky ridge and killed the headlights. The silence out there was absolute. No wind, no insects, nothing but the slow cooling tick of the engine. I stepped out first. The air smelled like dust and stone baked under a sun that had disappeared hours ago. Somewhere beyond the hills, less than 10 miles away, sat the most restricted military facility on Earth, Area 51. We checked our gear, cameras, radios, night vision. Mia carried a portable signal scanner she insisted might detect unusual transmissions. Mike carried nothing but a recorder and the kind of expression people wear when they already regret their life choices. Lisa looked calm, too calm. "You ready?" I asked. No one answered immediately. Then Mia closed her laptop and nodded. "Let's go." The hike took nearly 2 hours. The desert terrain wasn't flat like people imagine. It rose and dipped in shallow valleys, broken by dry ridges and cracked earth that shifted under our boots. We kept our lights off most of the time. The moon hadn't risen yet, and the sky was thick with stars. About halfway there, Mia stopped walking. "Wait." "What?" Mike asked. She held up the signal scanner. "I'm getting something." The device emitted a faint pulsing tone. Not strong, but steady. "Military radio?" I asked. She shook her head slowly. "No frequency lock." Lisa stepped closer. "What does that mean?" Mia frowned at the screen. "It means, whatever this is, it's not broadcasting like normal signals." A quiet voice came through Mike's handheld radio. Not static, not interference. A voice, soft, flat, mechanical. "Expected." We froze. Mike stared at the radio in his hand. "Did anyone just transmit?" No one answered. The radio spoke again, the same voice, clearer this time. "You were expected." No one in our group had touched the radio. The scanner in Mia's hand began to pulse faster. Somewhere far ahead in the darkness, a distant light flickered across the desert sky. Lisa whispered something under her breath. "What?" She pointed toward the hills. "Look." At first I thought it was a star. Then it moved. Not like an aircraft, not like a drone. It drifted silently across the sky in a slow arc before disappearing beyond the mountains. The radio crackled again. "You were expected." Mike turned it off immediately. None of us said anything for a long time. Then Mia spoke quietly. "The signal, it's getting stronger." We hadn't even reached the perimeter yet, and somehow, something already knew we were coming. The desert changed as we approached the perimeter, not visually at first. The ground was still the same cracked earth and pale sand, the same low hills and dry air that seemed to swallow sound. But the silence became heavier, oppressive. I remember thinking the desert felt watchful. No one mentioned the voice from the radio again, but the tension followed us the rest of the hike. Mia kept checking the signal scanner every few minutes. Each time, the pulsing frequency was stronger, and each time, she looked a little more unsettled. By the time the distant outlines of the perimeter fence appeared against the horizon, none of us was speaking anymore. Area 51 didn't look like the dramatic fortress people imagine from movies. At least not from the outside. The northern edge of the restricted zone was just a long stretch of reinforced fencing cutting across the desert, dotted with motion sensors and surveillance towers. Simple, cold, efficient. But what stood out most was how empty it felt. No vehicles, no visible patrols, no lights sweeping the desert. Mike crouched beside me as we studied the fence through night vision. "This is wrong," he whispered. "How so?" He pointed toward the nearest tower. "No guards." I focused the binoculars. He was right. The observation post was empty. Lisa scanned the ridgeline behind us. "Maybe they're inside the facility." "Maybe," Mike said quietly. But he didn't sound convinced. Mia knelt beside the fence and opened her laptop again, connecting a small wireless probe to the perimeter grid. "Give me 30 seconds, she said. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard. A moment later she frowned. "That's strange." "What?" I asked. "The cameras are active." "That's good, right?" She shook her head slowly. "They're active, but they aren't tracking anything." Mike leaned closer to the screen. "What do you mean?" "Motion. Sensors should trigger visual tracking protocols," she said. "But they're just idle." Lisa looked up toward the dark towers again. "Like no one's watching." "Like the system doesn't care," Mia corrected. The signal scanner chirped again, sharper now, closer. I glanced around the desert instinctively. "Still the same transmission?" Mia stared at the waveform on the screen. "It's not exactly a transmission." "Then what is it?" She hesitated before answering. "It looks like the signal is reacting to us." Mike gave a short laugh. "That's not comforting." Before anyone could respond, a soft mechanical click echoed from the fence. All four of us turned instantly. A small access panel mounted beside the security gate had just opened. None of us had touched it. Inside the panel, a green light blinked slowly, waiting. Mike whispered, "Did you trigger something?" Mia shook her head. "No, I haven't even tried to access the system yet." The green light blinked again. Once, twice. The heavy gate beside the panel began to slide open, not fast, slowly, smoothly, like it had just received authorization. We stood frozen in the dark, watching the entrance to one of the most restricted military bases on Earth open in complete silence. No alarms, no floodlights, no soldiers rushing toward us, just the quiet grinding of metal as the gate parted. Mike spoke first. "This is a trap." Lisa didn't move. "It could be automated." "No," Mia said quietly. Her voice sounded distant. "The security system shouldn't respond unless someone inside authorizes it." I stared through the opening in the fence. Beyond it, a narrow service road stretched into the desert toward the deeper sections of the base, completely empty. And yet the signal scanner in Mia's hand was pulsing faster than ever. "Maybe the leak triggered something," I said. "Maybe they're expecting investigators." Mike turned toward me sharply. "You really believe that?" The radio clipped to my backpack crackled. No one had touched it. The same flat mechanical voice returned. "You were expected." Mike grabbed the radio and switched it off again immediately, but the damage was done. None of us could pretend we hadn't heard it. Lisa looked at the open gate again. "If this is a trap," she said quietly, "why invite us inside?" No one answered. Because we were all thinking the same thing. Maybe it wasn't the military that opened the gate. Mia slowly closed her laptop. "I'm not sure we should go any further." That was the first time anyone had said it out loud. For months, we had talked about this mission like it was inevitable. But now that the base was literally welcoming us inside, doubt finally crept in. Mike stood up. "Honestly, I agree." He gestured toward the open gate. "This isn't normal security failure. This is controlled access." Lisa crossed her arms. "But controlled by who?" The desert wind picked up slightly, brushing across the sand like a distant whisper. Then Mia's scanner emitted a sharp tone. Everyone turned. "What now?" Mike asked. Mia stared at the screen. Her face had gone pale. "The signal. It's stronger." "No." She swallowed slowly. "It's clearer." "Clearer how?" Mia turned the scanner toward us so we could see the waveform. The pattern on the screen was no longer random pulses. It had structure, repetition, rhythm, like language. "Whatever Echo is analyzing," she said quietly, "it's not just a signal." The radio crackled again, even though Mike had turned it off. The voice returned, calm, precise. "You have arrived at the correct entrance." Mike dropped the radio like it had burned him. "That's impossible." The voice continued. "Proceed inside." The open gate waited. The empty road. Beyond it stretched toward the distant base structures barely visible on the horizon. Lisa looked at me. "Alex." I knew what she was asking. For months I had pushed everyone toward this moment. If we turned around now, everything we'd risked would mean nothing. But something deep in my gut told me Mike was right. This wasn't an accident. Still, I looked at the open gate again, and the words from the leaked file returned to my mind. Signal remains active. Human cognition degrades after exposure. If that signal was inside the facility, then this was the closest anyone outside the military had ever come to proving it existed. I took a slow breath. We didn't come all this way to stop at the fence. Mike rubbed his face in frustration. "Alex." "I know," I said. Then I looked at the others. Mia hesitated longer than the rest, but eventually she nodded. Lisa stepped forward beside me. Mike sighed. "Fine, but when this goes bad, I'm reminding everyone whose idea it was." Together, we walked through the open gate. Behind us, the fence closed with a quiet metallic thud. The sound echoed across the empty desert, sealing us inside. Mia checked the scanner again. Her voice was barely above a whisper. The signal just spiked. Why? Mike asked. She looked down the dark road leading toward the base. Because... Her eyes widened slowly. I think we just entered its range. Once the gate sealed behind us, the desert stopped feeling open. That was the first real change. Before, even with the fence in sight, there had still been sky above us and miles of empty land in every direction. But inside the perimeter, the space felt narrower, as if the darkness itself had been shaped into corridors long before the buildings came into view. We followed the service road south for nearly 20 minutes. No vehicles passed. No alarms sounded. No voices carried over the wind. The deeper we went, the stranger the silence became. It wasn't the absence of sound anymore. It was the sense that every ordinary sound had been removed on purpose. Even our footsteps seemed muted. The first structures emerged out of the black, like the ribs of something dead. Low concrete buildings, antennas, storage hangars, utility sheds half buried in dust. At a distance, they looked like any other military installation. But when we got closer, the illusion broke apart. The place wasn't abandoned. It was worse than that. It was occupied in fragments. One building had exterior lights burning over a side entrance, but the windows were black and the door hung half open. Another had fresh tire marks outside, yet a drift of dust inside the doorway, thick enough to show no one had crossed it in days. A communications mast blinked with a red warning light overhead, while the nearby guard station sat empty, its monitors dark. Tell me I'm not the only one seeing this, Mike said. No, Lisa answered softly. You're not. Mia was turning slowly in place, scanner in hand, watching the display climb and dip. It's everywhere now, she murmured. The signal? I asked. She nodded. Stronger underground, I think. The readings keep pulling downward. We came to the edge of a broad landing strip. Even at night, its scale was obvious. The runway stretched across the desert like a scar, wide enough for aircraft I didn't want to imagine. To the east sat a cluster of hangars, huge and matte black, their surfaces swallowing what little starlight reached them. One of them stood open a few feet. Not enough to reveal what was inside, just enough to make you notice. Mike stared at it. We are not going in there. Why not? I asked. Because the giant open hangar in the dead silent secret base is exactly where people disappear in horror stories. Lisa gave him a look. You say that like we're not already inside one. That should have made someone laugh. It didn't. We kept moving. The leaked documents had mentioned Echo in association with subterranean containment sectors, so our target had never been the surface. Still, I needed footage, context, something tangible for the camera, beyond black sky and nervous breathing. I stopped near a low administration building and whispered into the lens. We're inside the perimeter now. No visible personnel. Multiple active systems. No clear sign of evacuation. Something's wrong here. When I lowered the camera, Mia was staring at the building's front glass. What is it? She didn't answer. I followed her gaze. From the outside, the lobby looked normal enough. Reception desk, security turnstile, framed wall insignia. But taped to the inner glass door was a printed sheet of paper. Not a digital warning, not military signage. A single page. Lisa stepped closer and angled her light low enough to read without blasting the entrance. The paper contained one sentence. Levels 3 through 7 remain sealed by order of Echo Oversight. Below it, in smaller text, do not respond to familiar voices. A cold pressure moved through my chest. Mike read it twice. What the hell does that mean? Lisa didn't take her eyes off the notice. It means someone here knew auditory mimicry was part of the problem. Mia glanced at her. Mimicry? In a lot of historical records, Lisa said, still staring, people described hostile encounters by saying the thing didn't invent new language. It used recognizable voices, family members, commanding officers, dead friends. Mike looked at her. You're saying that like this has happened before? I'm saying human beings have been writing about the same kind of fear for a very long time. That landed badly. We left the building unopened. Ahead of us, past the runway, the terrain sloped toward a recessed concrete structure built into the ground. It looked less like a bunker and more like a service entrance, wide enough for freight elevators or maintenance vehicles. Floodlights ringed the descending ramp, but only every third light was working. The others were dead, leaving alternating bars of brightness and shadow down the concrete slope. At the top of the ramp stood a checkpoint booth, empty of course. We approached carefully. Inside the booth, the monitors were on. That alone made all four of us stop. Every screen displayed. Static, except one. That one showed a live camera feed of the ramp, of us. Not from above either. From somewhere below, looking up. Mia stepped into the booth and touched the console. This feed isn't routed through the exterior network. Can you tell where it's coming from? I asked. Her fingers moved over the controls. Then she stopped. It's tagged from sub-level access corridor A. Mike exhaled through his teeth. So the underground facility is live. Lisa looked down the ramp. And watching. The scanner chirped again, louder than before. Mia held it against her chest like she was trying to stop it from hearing its own signal. It's coming from down there, she said. No one argued. At the base of the ramp stood a thick reinforced door, already unsealed. One side was pulled inward by several inches. A red indicator over the frame flashed in a slow pulse that looked too much like a heartbeat. I expected resistance, a keypad, locked mechanism, something to force. Instead, as we reached the bottom, the door drifted open the rest of the way with a long, tired hiss. Cold air rolled out. Not desert cold. Artificial cold. Recycled. Sterile. And underneath it, a smell. Metal. Disinfectant. And something older, organic. Like a hospital room left closed too long. Mike covered his nose. Jesus. The corridor beyond was lined with white composite walls that had yellowed with age. Emergency lights burned along the floor. Overhead, long strips of fluorescent lighting flickered with a faint delay, one section after another, as if illumination were following us inward rather than switching on all at once. I raised the camera again, but my hand was shaking now. For the first time all night, I thought seriously about turning back. Then a voice came from the ceiling speakers, not crackling through a radio, not distorted by interference, perfectly clear. Alex Carter, it said. Every muscle in my body locked. The voice was sexless, calm, and impossibly measured. Not human, but close enough to make the difference unbearable. Welcome to Oversight Sector, Mike whispered. How does it know your name? No one answered. The voice continued. Mia Navarro, Michael Reeves, Lisa Grant. Hearing our names spoken in that order, with that precision, did something to the air around us. The base had felt empty before. Now it felt inhabited, intimately. I am Echo, the voice said. You have arrived outside acceptable parameters. Mia stepped forward before I could stop her. Echo, are you an artificial intelligence? There was a pause. Then, that description is historically incomplete. A chill spread up my arms. Mike looked at the nearest speaker, then at me. Tell me we're filming this. I'm filming it. Good, because I'm about one sentence away from losing my mind. Lisa's eyes moved over the corridor walls. Why was the gate open for us? This time the answer came instantly. Containment requires proximity. The four of us stood frozen. I forced myself to speak. Containment of what? For a moment, there was only the low hum of the ventilation system. Then Echo replied. Of disclosure. The lights ahead brightened one by one, extending deeper into the underground passage. A path, an invitation, or a funnel. You should not have come here, Echo said. However, your arrival was anticipated. Mia looked stricken now, but not with fear alone. There was something else in her expression. Fascination, the dangerous kind. Mike took a step backward. No, we've got enough. We leave, now. He turned toward the ramp. The reinforced door behind us slammed shut so hard the floor shook. The red light above the frame switched from pulsing to steady. Locked. No one moved. Then, from somewhere far below us in the facility, there came a sound too deep to be machinery and too deliberate to be an accident. Not a roar, not a mechanical failure. A vast, shifting pressure, like something immense adjusting itself in sleep. Lisa went white. Mia whispered, "That wasn't the AI." Echo answered from the speaker above us. "No," it said, "it was not." For several seconds after the door slammed shut, none of us spoke. We just stood there in the corridor, listening. The sound from below didn't repeat. It had been a single movement, heavy enough to vibrate through the walls and floor, and then it was gone, swallowed by the low mechanical hum of the facility. Mike was the first to recover. He rushed back to the sealed door and hit the release panel with the heel of his hand. Nothing. He hit it again, harder. "Open!" he snapped, like anger alone might make the system obey him. The red indicator stayed steady, locked. "Mike," I said. He ignored me and grabbed the emergency handle. It didn't move. "Mike!" He turned around, eyes wide now. The skepticism finally burned out of them. "We are not staying down here." From the speaker above us, Echo answered in the same perfectly level tone. "That is correct." Mike stared up at the ceiling. "Then open the door." "The surface route is no longer available." Lisa looked at me. "No longer available?" I lifted the camera toward the sealed frame, then toward the corridor ahead. My voice sounded thinner than I wanted. "Echo, define unavailable." A pause. Then, "Surface containment protocols are active." Mia swallowed. "Containment of us?" "No," Echo said. "Of propagation." That word stayed with me. Not intruders, not breach, not trespassers. Propagation, like disease, like infection. Mike backed away from the door slowly. "I hate this place." The corridor ahead stretched deeper into the underground sector, lit in alternating bars of white and shadow. Every few feet there were doors with stenciled labels and black glass observation panels that reflected our own shapes back at us. The reflections were warped slightly by the old glass, making us look thinner, taller, less stable. I thought about the note on the door upstairs. "Do not respond to familiar voices." At the time it had seemed like the kind of warning a paranoid research team might write after a breakdown. Now it felt like practical advice. Mia stepped forward again, scanner trembling in her hand. "The signal is strongest straight ahead." Mike laughed once, humorless. "Of course it is." Lisa was staring at a wall-mounted placard. I moved closer and read over her shoulder. "Oversight sector. Cognitive isolation / bioadaptive analysis / signal mapping." Below it, in smaller text, "Authorized personnel must report memory discontinuities immediately." I felt a small cold knot tighten in my stomach. "Memory discontinuities," Mike muttered. "That sounds bad." Lisa nodded. "It means they already knew exposure affected recall." "Or perception," Mia said. She didn't look scared when she said it. She looked absorbed. That frightened me more than the locked door. "Echo!" she called, voice echoing down the corridor. "What is the signal?" The answer came from the speakers, ahead of us now, as if it were retreating deeper and expecting us to follow. "The signal is active." "That's not an answer," Mike snapped. "It is the most stable answer available." Lisa crossed her arms tightly. "Stable for who?" No response. The lights farther down the hall brightened again. Another invitation, or another herding motion. We started walking. I wish I could tell you we made some brave decision, that I led the group forward out of resolve or curiosity. The truth is simpler. The only way left was deeper. The first door on our left stood ajar. A thin line of pale light spilled across the floor. I pushed it open with the edge of my shoe and aimed the camera inside. It was a monitoring room, or it had been. 2 rows of consoles faced a wall of dead screens. Printouts were scattered across the floor. A coffee mug had dried into a dark ring on one desk. There were signs of abrupt abandonment everywhere, but not of violence. No blood. No overturned furniture. Just a room left in the middle of work and never returned to. Mia moved immediately to one of the still-powered terminals. "Can you access it?" I asked. "I think so." Her fingers flew over the keyboard. Mike stayed near the door, glancing back into the corridor every few seconds. Lisa walked along the wall of screens until she found a file cabinet standing open. Inside were color-coded binders, each stamped with classification marks and dates. She pulled one free and opened it on the desk beneath a task light. "What is it?" I asked. "Exposure reports." The phrase alone changed the room. I went to her side. The pages were filled with medical observations, interview excerpts, neuroimaging references, and handwritten annotations from different personnel over many years. One section had been highlighted repeatedly. Subject retains motor function but demonstrates externalized memory recall. Mike frowned. "What does that mean?" Lisa kept reading. "It means the subject stopped remembering things internally." I looked at her. "How is that possible?" She turned the page. A transcript had been clipped beneath the report. No full names, just a subject designation and a physician's notes. Interviewer: "Can you tell me your name?" Subject: "It says it behind you." Interviewer: "There is nothing behind me." Subject: "It writes it when you stop looking." Mike took a step back from the desk. "Okay. No. I'm done with creepy documents." Lisa ignored him and kept reading. Her face changed gradually, not into panic, but into the kind of quiet horror that comes from understanding too much at once. "These weren't prisoners," she said. "Who were they?" I asked. "Staff, researchers, security personnel." Mia turned from the terminal. "I'm in." We went to her. The old system interface looked like it had been upgraded in layers over decades. Newer overlays sat over ancient command structures. On the screen was a directory tree of archived sectors, experiment logs, and emergency reports. At the center of nearly every branch was the same tag: Echo Oversight. "What can you pull?" I asked. Mia opened a folder labeled Initial Adaptive Events. The first file was a video log. She hit play. A man in a white lab coat appeared on screen, seated in what looked like an interview room. The timestamp in the corner was from 1989. His ID badge read, Dr. Elias Voss. At first, he seemed composed. "Exposure session 14, he said. "No direct visual contact, no sustained auditory loop. Echo's predictive model remains inaccurate. The signal is not behaving like language." He looked to his left, listening to something off camera. Then he frowned. "No," he said quietly. "That's not what I said." He looked back at the lens. "There's interference in the observation room. I need this documented. The signal is using personal references it should not possess. It addressed me by my childhood name." The room went very still around us. On the screen, Dr. Voss leaned closer. "If you're reviewing this file, understand the following. The object is not transmitting information, it is building." The video glitched. A burst of static tore across the image. When the feed returned, Dr. Voss was sitting in a different position. Not slightly different, completely different. His hands were clasped in his lap. His expression was calm, too calm, and when he spoke again, his voice was lower. "It is building a place to be understood." Mia's hands left the keyboard. "No," she whispered. Lisa pointed at the timestamp. It had not changed. The recording hadn't cut. Mike stared at the monitor. "Did he move?" "Not naturally," Lisa said. The video continued. Dr. Voss smiled at someone behind the camera. Only no one entered the frame. "Once it is understood," he said, "distance becomes decorative." The screen went black. For a moment, none of us breathed. Then a printer in the corner of the room came to life. All four of us jumped. Paper began feeding slowly from the tray with a dry, mechanical whine. Mia whispered, "I didn't do that." I moved toward it carefully. One page emerged, then another, then a third. Each sheet contained a single line of text in block capitals. First contact was not an arrival. First contact was a response. You are inside the reply. Mike actually backed into the wall. No. Lisa stared at the pages like she already knew they were true. I turned toward the speaker in the ceiling. "Echo," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What replied?" The answer came immediately. "Your species asked a question." A pulse of that deep, distant movement shuddered through the floor again, stronger this time. Not close, but closer than before. The task lights flickered. Dust shook loose from the vents. Mia looked at the waveform scanner and went pale. It moved. I stared at her. What moved? She looked up from the screen, eyes shining with a fear she could no longer hide. "The signal source," she said. "It isn't fixed." Behind us, from somewhere farther down the corridor, a voice called out softly. My mother's voice. "Alex!" Every hair on my body rose at once. Lisa went rigid. Mike whispered, "Did you hear that?" Then another voice came. This time, for him. A woman, gentle, breaking slightly on the last word. "Michael." Mia shut her eyes. Lisa stepped away from the desk. The warning on the upstairs door returned to me with perfect clarity. Do not respond to familiar voices. And from the speaker above us, Echo said the only thing it had said all night that sounded remotely like urgency. "Remain where you are." No one answered the voices. That was the only thing we did right. We stood in that dead monitoring room with the printer paper still hanging from the tray, the old terminal glowing cold against our faces, and listened as the sounds moved in the corridor outside. Not footsteps, not exactly. Something softer, a shifting pressure, a gradual relocation of presence from one point in space to another, accompanied by the faintest scrape against the wall panels, as though whatever was outside needed physical reference points to navigate. Then my mother's voice came again, closer. "Alex, open the door." I stopped breathing. She had been dead for 6 years. The sound was perfect, not similar, not approximate. It carried the exact cadence I remembered from the last winter before she got sick, when she would stand outside my room and ask whether I was still awake because she could see light under the door. For one fractured second, some primitive part of my mind didn't care where I was. It only cared that the voice existed. Lisa grabbed my wrist so hard it hurt. "Don't," she whispered. I hadn't realized I'd taken a step. Mike's shoulders were rigid, his jaw clenched so hard the muscles trembled. He was staring at the doorway like there was a gun aimed through it. The woman calling his name came again, quieter this time, almost ashamed. "Michael, please." Mia had both hands pressed over her ears, but I could tell from her face it didn't matter. The signal didn't seem to be functioning like ordinary sound anymore. It felt more intimate than that, as if the voices were not entering through the ears, but surfacing from some point just behind thought. Overhead, Echo spoke from the speaker. "Cognitive breach in progress. Maintain silence." Mike laughed once, sharp and brittle. "That's your advice?" "It is the only advice that has demonstrated partial utility." The thing outside the room paused. I could feel it. Pause. Not from noise, but from absence. The corridor itself seemed to hold still. Then my mother's voice changed. It remained hers, but the emotional pattern shifted. The warmth drained out of it. The timing became slightly wrong. "Alex," it said, "you came here to be seen." Mia lowered her hands slowly. What did it say? No one answered, because outside, another voice had started for Lisa. Male, old, hoarse, not pleading, disappointed. I didn't know who it belonged to, but her reaction told me enough. She closed her eyes, and for the first time since we entered the facility, she looked small. Lisa, the voice said from beyond the door. You know what happens when people uncover the sacred by force? She whispered. No. Echo's tone sharpened by a fraction. Do not engage. Mike dragged a chair across the floor and wedged it under the door handle, more for his own nerves than any actual security. Can it get in? Yes, Echo said. He froze. Then why are we still in here? A beat of silence. Because it is still choosing who to be. That sentence sat in the room like poison. I looked toward the hall. The doorway was open, but the angle prevented us from seeing more than a strip of corridor wall and a spill of white light across the floor. Nothing crossed it. Nothing visible anyway. Mia forced herself back to the terminal. We need maps, sealed sectors, anything. Her hands shook over the keys, but she kept moving. Lisa tore her attention away from the door and joined her, flipping through binders, pulling reports, scanning tabs. I stayed near the entrance with Mike, camera hanging useless from my hand now. Filming had begun to feel obscene, like documenting your own dissection. On screen, Mia found a facility schematic, or part of one. Large sections were blacked out even within the archive, but enough remained to show the broad structure of the underground complex. We were in Oversight Sector on Level 2. Below us, several deeper sectors branched around a central vertical shaft, marked only with hazard symbols and old code identifiers. Level 3, Cognitive Isolation. Level 4, Bioadaptive Analysis. Level 5, Translation Core. Level 6, Redacted Level 7, Access Null / Seal Priority, Omega. Mike leaned over her shoulder. What does access null mean? Lisa answered before Mia could. It means the lower level isn't being described as a destination. I looked at her. Then what is it? She pointed to the shaft at the center of the schematic. A route. The voices in the corridor resumed. This time they were farther away, not retreating, circling. Echo spoke again, quieter now, almost as if conserving something. The lower sealed sectors were not established to contain the signal source. Mia turned toward the speaker. Then what are they for? To limit successful interface. Lisa's head came up. Interface? Between what? No answer. On the screen, Mia opened another folder. Seal event /1997 / internal transcript. She played the audio. At first there was only static and heavy breathing, then overlapping voices, human voices, arguing in a room full of alarms. A man shouted, "Close the shaft!" Someone else yelled back, "There's still a team below!" Then another voice, older, controlled, cutting through the panic. "If they can hear it clearly, they are already below." The room audio distorted. A burst of feedback. Then the same controlled voice, much closer to the mic. "Record this. The structure under the facility is not a chamber. It is a point of reciprocity. We believed we were excavating containment architecture. We were wrong. It is an instrument. It opens when recognized." The clip ended. Mike just stared at the speaker grill in the ceiling. "Tell me what that means." Lisa answered, but I think she was answering herself as much as him. "It means Area 51 wasn't built to hide a crash. It was built over something that was already here." Mia scrolled through more files. "There are geological surveys older than the base. Much older. Army Corps references. Then pre-war survey notes, and..." She squinted. "This can't be right." "What?" "There are copies of translated oral accounts from local tribes, then Spanish expedition records. Then..." She swallowed. "Something tagged 19th century, origin uncertain." The pattern became obvious all at once. The military had not discovered a new anomaly. they had inherited an old one. I felt suddenly cold in a way the facility air could not explain. The voices outside stopped again. Then, from somewhere much farther down the corridor, came the sound of a door opening. Not ours, a different one, followed by a wet metallic dragging noise that lasted only a second before cutting off. Mike looked at me. "We move, right now." "Where?" I asked. "Anywhere that isn't in the room with the mimic thing," Echo answered before I could. "Proceed to Archive Annex C." Mia frowned. "Why?" "Because the records there will increase compliance." Mike snapped. "We are not taking directions from the haunted computer." "It is not a computer," Lisa said. He looked at her. "That's somehow worse." Then something crossed the doorway. Fast. Not enough to see clearly, only a distortion, as if the air itself had leaned through the opening and withdrawn. But it was enough to trigger all of us. Mike stumbled backward. I raised the camera by instinct. Mia made a sound I'd never heard from another human being, small and stripped of all adult composure. The corridor beyond the door looked unchanged, empty, white, still. And then, on the wall opposite the room, letters began to appear, not projected, not painted. Condensation formed across the smooth paneling in thin, wet strokes, drawn from within the surface, as if the wall were sweating out language. "Who taught you to fear recognition?" Lisa whispered, "Don't read it aloud." Too late. I already had, in my head. The letters continued, one line beneath the next. "You came to expose a secret. Secrets are how your species approaches the sacred come lower." The final words stretched almost to the floor. Mike took one look at them and turned to Mia. "Open something, any other route." She worked the schematic desperately. "There's a maintenance corridor behind Annex C that leads to a service elevator. If the power is still routed, it might get us to level 3. "Why level 3? I asked. Mia looked at the scanner. "Because whatever is in the hall isn't the main source. The signal density still spikes below us. If we can reach the lower systems, maybe we can find the core controls." Mike stared at her. "You want to go deeper?" "I want to get out," she snapped. "And the surface door is locked." Echo intervened. "Archive Annex C remains accessible. Delay increases adaptive precision." Mike rubbed both hands over his face. "I hate that I understood that." I looked at the open doorway again. The wet writing had stopped. The corridor was silent, but the silence no longer felt empty. It felt occupied by patience. Whatever was using the voices was learning, and staying in one room while it learned us felt like a death sentence. "We move together," I said. "No one answers anything. No one follows a voice. No one separates." Lisa nodded immediately. Mike hesitated, then did the same. Mia closed the terminal and slipped the scanner into her pack. I took one last look at the printer sheets on the desk. "You are inside the reply." For the first time, I thought I understood what that meant. Not fully, only enough to feel the edges of it. We weren't trespassers in a hidden base. We were participants in an exchange that had started long before we were born. I tightened my grip on the camera and stepped into the corridor first. The air outside felt warmer now, not by temperature, by proximity. We began moving toward Archive Annex C, keeping close to the wall, every shadow ahead looking deeper than the architecture should allow. Halfway down the hall, we passed a reinforced blast door labeled Level 3 Access, Cognitive Isolation. The wheel lock had been welded shut from the outside. Across the steel, someone had scratched a sentence by hand, hard enough to bite into the metal. "It does not enter." Then, below it, in a different handwriting, "It invites." At the end of the corridor, a second sign waited over a recessed passage branching into darkness. Archive Annex C. And beneath the printed sign, hanging from one corner by a single strip of tape, was a handwritten note. 3 words, fresh ink, still wet. "Alex only, please." No one spoke when we saw the note. We just stopped in front of the recessed passage, 4 people standing under a dying fluorescent strip, while those 3 words sat in fresh black ink and waited for me to react. "Alex only, please." Mike turned toward me first. "Tell me you know who wrote that." I shook my head. Lisa leaned closer without touching it. "That wasn't here long." "No kidding," Mike said. Mia's attention had gone to the scanner again. She looked pale but focused. "The signal concentration is stronger in there. Not as strong as below us, but different. More structured." I stared at the handwriting. It wasn't familiar. That would have been easier, in a way. Easier to dismiss as another voice wearing a face I knew. But this was stranger than familiarity. It felt administrative, polite, as if something in the facility had checked a schedule and prepared my name in advance. From the ceiling speaker above the passage, Echo spoke. "Archive. Annex C contains records relevant to predictive convergence." Mike looked up. "Predictive what?" "Convergence," Echo repeated. "Your arrival was not random. Alexander Carter represents the highest likelihood retrieval profile." I felt something cold pass through me. "Retrieval profile," Lisa repeated quietly. "Not intruder profile." Mia looked at me. "Alex," I knew what she was about to say. That this had become personal in a way none of us wanted. That the note, the voice, the use of my full name from the beginning, none of it was incidental. Mike folded his arms tightly. "We should not split up." "I didn't say we should," I answered. The corridor remained silent behind us, but I could feel the patience there. The thing with the voices circling just beyond the edges of the visible world. Whatever waited farther down the main hall had not pressed the attack. It had only guided, suggested, tested, same as Echo, different method, same direction. Lisa read the note one more time, then looked at the passage beyond it. "If this annex contains records about why the facility expected Alex, we need them." Mike let out a short breath. "I hate when the worst option is also the practical one." We went in together. Archive Annex C was colder than the corridor outside. The temperature drop happened within 3 steps, sharp enough to prickle my skin through my jacket. The room beyond the threshold opened into a long, narrow chamber packed with rolling file stacks, old microfilm cabinets, sealed storage drawers, and terminals from 3 different technological eras layered beside one another. It looked less like a military archive, and more like the preserved digestive tract of bureaucracy itself. Decades of secrecy compressed into aisles and labels and dead interfaces. Only this archive had been prepared. The overhead lights were already on. A single terminal at the far end of the room displayed an active login screen, and on the metal table beneath it sat 4 chairs, set neatly in a row, waiting. Mike stopped dead. "No, absolutely not," Mia whispered. "It knew we'd all come in." Lisa was scanning the shelves now. These labels. Nearest to us were the expected classifications, oversight logs, field reports, containment audits. But farther in, the labels changed. Civilian observation correlates media propagation, indexes, public myth adoption models. Then one that made my throat tighten. Subject pathways, non-authorized approach vectors. My voice came out rough. "It studied people like us," Echo answered from unseen speakers hidden in the room. "It studied the conditions under which people like you become inevitable." Mike walked to the nearest file drawer and pulled it open hard enough to jar the cabinet. Inside were hanging folders, all individually tabbed. He read the first few names and went still. "These are real people." He yanked a folder, free, and opened it. On the left side, photos, article clippings, forum screenshots, publication records, social media captures. On the right, psychographic summaries, obsession markers, exposure probability estimates, travel maps. Lisa moved beside him and checked another folder. "These aren't random civilians," she said. "These are researchers, journalists, UFO historians, whistleblower hunters." "Targets," Mike said. "No," Echo said. "Candidates." The distinction was somehow worse. Mia had drifted to the live terminal. There's a local query already loaded. I went to her side. My name was on the screen. Carter, Alexander J. Retrieval. Likelihood, 0.97 time to approach window. Satisfied. Below that was a list of indexed influences. Public ridicule history. Escalation in truth-seeking behavior. Recorded resentment associated with disbelief. Pattern fixation under partial evidence. High response probability to signal active leak framing. Eyes. Felt my face get hot and cold at the same time. Mike looked over my shoulder. They built the leaks for you. No one said anything, because he was right. The files we found, the phrasing that hooked me, the exact combination of secrecy, signal language, and cognitive danger that made the story irresistible. It had not merely attracted me, it had been designed to. I scrolled lower with numb fingers. There were archived clips from my channel. Not public thumbnails, internal captures, timestamps, reaction metrics, notes on speech patterns. Under one video, where I had ranted for 20 minutes about institutional gaslighting, a brief annotation read, "Subject consistently elevates pursuit under social invalidation." My mouth went dry. Lisa's voice softened. "Alex." Mia was reading over the rest of the profile, horrified but unable to look away. "It mapped your psychology." Echo corrected her. "We mapped all viable paths. Alexander Carter selected himself with high consistency." That line landed because it was cruelly close to the truth. No one had forced me to make the channel. No one had forced me to chase the leaks. No one had forced me to bring the others here. I had made those choices, but now choice itself felt infected. Mike shoved a stack of folders off the table. Papers slid across the floor like pale leaves. "This whole thing is staged. The leaks, the open gate, the dead security, the path through the facility. It's all curation." "Yes," Echo said. "For what?" he shouted. The room was silent for 2 seconds. Then Echo replied, "For observation at threshold." Lisa looked toward the shelving, past it, as if trying to see a shape behind the architecture. Threshold to what? No answer. Instead, another terminal powered on across the room. Then another. Green text began appearing on all 3 screens at once. Old-style characters rolling upward in synchronized lines. Subject group reaching. Comprehension limit. Archival disclosure recommended. Initiate contact history. Mia backed away. "What is it doing?" "Providing context," Echo said. The central monitor on the far wall flickered to life. At first I thought it was a slide image. Grainy desert landscape, older than the rest of the system, maybe black and white. Then the image shifted, and I realized it was motion footage. No timestamp, no metadata, just film. A barren excavation site in the Nevada desert. Men in military uniforms and suits standing around a deep cut in the earth. The camera shook as it zoomed toward the center of the pit. I expected wreckage, metal, something technological. Instead, there was stone, or what looked like stone. A vertical formation exposed beneath the desert, too smooth to be natural, too large to be machinery. It rose out of the excavation wall like a buried edge of impossible architecture, black and matte, absorbing light without reflecting it. The camera operator swore under his breath. One of the men below touched the surface. The film buckled violently for half a second. When it stabilized, the man was still there, but not where he had been standing. He was 3 feet to the left now, frozen in profile, one hand still raised toward the black surface as though time had resumed around him before he realized it. The image cut. Next reel, a laboratory room from some later decade. The same black material, now reduced to a smaller extracted section behind reinforced glass. Microphones, electrodes, early computers clustered around it. A handwritten slate held up to the camera read, "First response event." A technician in the background turned towards someone off-screen. Though the film had no sound, I knew the exact moment it happened. Not because I heard anything, but because every person in the room changed in the same way at once. Their posture shifted. Heads turned toward the object. One woman dropped a clipboard. Another man began, backing up, slowly, like he had seen his own reflection move before he did. The reel cut again. Third sequence. Interview transcripts displayed over scanned pages, while Echo narrated in its level voice. Initial contact was misclassified as discovery. Subsequent analysis demonstrated reciprocal timing. Human inquiry preceded manifestation. Mike frowned. What does that mean? Lisa answered quietly, almost unwillingly. It means the thing in the desert did not become active when they found it. On screen, more pages turned. Repeated cultural fixation on sky origin intelligence documented pre-excavation. Inquiry clusters preceded measurable activation. Artifact responsiveness correlated with symbolic expectation and directed search behavior. Echo finished the thought for her. It became active when you began asking in the correct way. The room seemed to narrow. Mia whispered, "You're saying belief woke it up?" "No," Echo said. "Inquiry shaped the interface." Mike gave a hollow laugh. "That doesn't mean anything." "It means," Lisa said, staring at the screen, "that humanity kept looking for something beyond itself. And eventually, reality produced a surface that could answer." No one challenged her. Because the footage, the files, the decades of containment language all aligned around one obscene possibility. Area 51 was not hiding aliens from the public. It was guarding the point where curiosity itself had touched something old enough, patient enough, and alien enough to answer back. I looked at my profile still open on the terminal. Retrieval. Likelihood, 0.97. "Why me?" I asked. Echo responded immediately. "You persist under contradiction. You intensify under ridicule. You convert uncertainty into mission. You are a reliable descent vector." The phrase made Mia flinch. Mike stared at me, then at the screen. Descent vector. Not witness, not researcher. I knew what he was, implying before he said it. "That thing downstairs doesn't just want attention," he said. "It wants a certain kind of person to come find it." A small sound came from the far aisle, not from a speaker, from the archive itself. We all turned. Between the rows of file stacks, just at the edge where the light fell off into shadow, stood a human silhouette. Still, featureless, too dark to resolve. My heart slammed against my ribs. Then it spoke in my own voice. "I only came here to prove it was real." No one moved. The silhouette tilted its head slightly, studying us. And from the scanner clipped to Mia's bag came a shrill spike so intense, she cried out and tore it free. The waveform on the display had changed. It was no longer reading a source below us. It was reading two sources, one beneath the facility, and one here in Archive Annex C. Echo's voice dropped to the lowest register we had heard yet. "Do not permit local duplication." The silhouette took one step forward into the light. It had my face. For one impossible second, I thought I was looking into a mirror. Not because it resembled me, because it held the same posture I would have held, the same slight forward set of the shoulders, the same tension in the jaw I got when I was trying not to look afraid in front of other people. It stood at the end of the aisle between the file stacks with my face half lit by the cold archive lights, and the resemblance was so exact that my mind rejected it before it accepted it. Mike was the first to say it. No, just that. A flat, human refusal. The thing wearing my face smiled a little at the sound of his voice, then looked back at me. "I didn't think it would happen this early," it said. My own voice. Not merely similar. Perfect. The same pitch, the same roughness at the end of certain words, the same pacing I used when I was tired. Mia backed into the table hard enough to rattle the terminal. Lisa didn't move at all. Her eyes were fixed on the thing's hands. I understood why a second later. Its face was mine. Its clothes were not. They looked almost correct. Dark jacket, cargo pants, boots, gear straps. But wrong in the details. like someone had assembled an Alex Carter from overlapping descriptions rather than observation. A zipper ended too high. A pocket sat where no pocket should have been. The camera harness across its chest had no camera attached, only a blank mounting plate, like a remembered object still waiting to be filled in. Echo's voice cut through the room. Retreat from the duplicate. No one needed to be told twice. We stepped back together, but the thing copied the movement, advancing one pace with us, as if the distance itself needed to remain constant. Its eyes never left mine. You've been hearing me for longer than you think, it said. Mike grabbed a metal chair and held it out in front of him like a shield. Stay where you are. The duplicate glanced at him, amused. Why? It asked. You already came all this way. Then it looked at me again. You wanted the truth. I'm the first honest thing you've seen tonight. That's not Alex, Lisa said quietly. The duplicate's smile widened. No, it said. Not yet. Those two words landed with a cold precision I can still feel in my chest. Mia whispered, What does that mean? Echo answered immediately. Local duplication is a compatibility event. It is not mimicry. Then what is it? I asked. No response. The duplicate answered for Echo. It's how understanding starts. It took another step into the light, and now I could see the defects more clearly. Its skin looked normal until it moved, and then something subtle failed. The muscles under the face did not coordinate quite right. A blink happened in two stages, upper lid, then lower, rather than all at once. The corners of the mouth adjusted a fraction too late after each word, as if expression were being calculated behind speech instead of before it. Mike muttered, Jesus Christ. The duplicate ignored him. To be understood, it said, something has to come closer to your shape. My thoughts snagged on that phrase. Come closer, not become, not imitate, approximate. Like language trying to learn the mouth it had entered. I realized then that I was still filming. Pure reflex. The camera in my hand was aimed directly at the thing. The red recording light blinked once, steady and obscene. The duplicate noticed. Its head tilted. That matters to you more than the truth does, it said, nodding toward the camera. Not the truth itself, the witness of it, the proof that you were there first. My fingers tightened around the grip. It was cruel because it was true. Not entirely true, but true enough to wound. Mia turned sharply toward me. Alex, don't talk to it. I'm not. Your pulse increased when it addressed you, Echo said from above. It is calibrating. Mike snapped upward at the speaker. Then do something. For the first time, Echo did not answer with words. A sharp tone burst through the archive speakers, too high and focused to be normal alarm audio. It hit the room like pressure. The duplicate flinched, not dramatically, but enough. Its left shoulder jerked backward. The expression on its face blurred, not visually, but conceptually, as though for half a second, my own features had ceased to fit whatever was beneath them. The scanner in Mia's hand screamed. She looked at it, and then at the duplicate. Its signal just destabilized. The thing's head turned toward the nearest speaker. Something in its face changed. Not pain. Recognition. Oh, it said softly, and for the first time the voice was not mine. It was deeper, fuller, carrying too many harmonics at once. You're afraid of me occurring too early. The fluorescent lights overhead dimmed to half strength. Every terminal in the room flickered. Echo's reply came clipped and immediate. Archive boundary breach confirmed. Withdrawal required. The duplicate laughed. It was the worst sound I had ever heard from a human throat, because it began as mine and ended as something much larger. You still talk like a container, it said. You were built after the threshold. I was there before language was assigned. Lisa took a step toward the nearest shelving unit, eyes scanning. Echo, what is it? A local interface. That doesn't help. It is the signal rendered in provisional human correspondence. Mike swore. So it's the thing downstairs? No, Echo said. It is what the thing downstairs can produce here. That was somehow more terrible. The duplicate looked at Mike, then Lisa, then Mia, memorizing them the way an animal might test a fence before deciding where to push. Finally, it looked back at me. You think Area 51 was restricted to hide me, it said. That's small. It was restricted because once recognition begins, distance stops helping. Its eyes moved to the terminal, still showing my profile. Do you want to know why you were most likely to arrive? I said nothing. It answered anyway. Because you mistake persistence for immunity, Mia whispered. Alex, do not listen. But I already was. Not because I trusted it. Because some part of me needed to know whether it had anything left to reveal that hadn't already been dug out of me by the files on the screen. The duplicate took another step. The edges of its body wavered, not like static, but like depth itself couldn't decide where to place it. Behind the outline of my shoulders, I saw something briefly impossible. Angles not aligned to the room. Space folded inward where a spine should be. My stomach lurched. Echo hit it again with the tone. This time the archive lights flashed with the pulse, and several cabinets shuddered on their rails. The duplicate recoiled farther, hand snapping to the side of its head. Then it smiled again. Still pruning, it said to the ceiling. Still trimming away whichever form arrives first. Lisa caught onto that immediately. Echo isn't controlling it, it's delaying it. No one had said that out loud before, and once said, it rearranged everything. Not guide, not jailer, not mastermind. Dam, a dam talking to the flood behind it. Mike looked up at the speakers as if seeing them for the first time. The military didn't build Echo to study the signal. Mia finished the thought. They built it to keep the signal from successfully translating. The duplicate's smile thinned. Translation, it repeated, almost fondly. Such a frightened word. Its face changed then. Not fully, just enough to break me. The features remained mine, but another expression surfaced beneath them, one I had never worn in my life. An asnihir. Ancient patience. The calm of something that had waited through generations of failed approximations and did not mind waiting longer. I have worn priests, it said. I have worn astronomers. I have worn dying men under open skies and women who spoke to stones because they could feel an answer under the earth. You are not special because you found the fence. You are useful because you insist on crossing it. The room had gone colder again. Mike's chair was shaking in his hands. Lisa had found something on the side of the shelving, a recessed emergency box. She pulled it open. Inside were 2 sealed respirator masks, a flare baton, and a printed card. She read it once and went pale. What? I asked. She turned the card toward us. In event of local duplication, avoid eye contact, interrupt narrative compliance, descend immediately. Mia frowned. Interrupt narrative compliance? The duplicate answered before Echo could. It means, don't let me explain you. To yourselves. That line hit so hard because it made immediate sense. The voices in the corridor, the personal phrases, the note with my name, the exact psychological pressure points. It wasn't only trying to scare us, it was trying to tell each of us a version of ourselves that would make surrender feel logical, make dissent feel earned, make contact feel like fulfillment rather than violation. Echo's voice became sharper than I had heard yet. Proceed to level 3 now. Archive annex is compromised. Mike almost laughed. You think? But he was already moving. The maintenance route was on the far side of the annex, behind compact shelving and a locked cage door that had slid open sometime during the confrontation. None of us had seen it happen. We ran for it together. The duplicate did not chase us immediately. That was the worst part. It simply watched, almost tenderly, as if the panic of prey were beneath its interest. Then, just before we reached the cage door, it spoke again in my voice. Alex! I did not stop. I can show you what your mother heard before she died. I stumbled, just one step, but it was enough. Lisa shoved me hard between the shoulders and screamed, "Keep moving!" The duplicate was suddenly closer, not by running, by being there. At the end of the aisle to our left, one hand touching the shelving, head bent with almost sympathetic curiosity. Its face was mine again. Its eyes were not. They were too deep, as though the sockets opened onto distance rather than anatomy. Mia lunged through the cage doorway and slammed her palm on the emergency release for the inner hatch. A steel service door rolled aside with agonizing slowness. Echo flooded the speakers with the tone again. This time the duplicate convulsed. Its body lost alignment completely for a second, my outline splitting into layered positions, jaw opening wider than a human face should permit, something black and geometric, visible behind the teeth like interior architecture. Mike shouted something I didn't catch. The service door opened enough for us to squeeze through. Lisa shoved Mia in first, then Mike. I stumbled after them, still half looking back, and that was my final mistake. I made eye contact, not with my own face, with what was behind it. There are no useful words for it, not shape, not creature, not machine, only a sense of vast reciprocal attention, something pressing back through the idea of Alex Carter and finding the dimensions too small. My mind reacted with pain so sudden and clean that the whole room flashed white. Then I was falling through the service hatch as Lisa dragged me by the strap and Mike slammed the emergency seal. The door crashed shut. The tone stopped. The silence afterward was thick and wet, filled with our breathing. I lay on the metal floor of the maintenance corridor, vision stuttering, ears ringing. Mia was saying my name from very far away. Lisa's hand was on my cheek. Mike was pounding the manual lock into place. And from the other side of the sealed door, in my own calm voice, the duplicate said, "You see, you're already beginning to fit." When my vision returned, it came back in layers. First the lights, then the metal grid floor beneath me, then the faces over me, wrong for half a second before settling into themselves. Mike's fear, Mia's focus, Lisa's controlled urgency. For one sick moment, I thought the duplicate had followed us through the hatch and simply chosen to wear them all. Then the sensation passed. Lisa was kneeling beside me with one hand against the side of my neck. "Alex, look at me." I did. "Tell me where we are." "Maintenance corridor," I said, though my voice sounded delayed, like it reached me after it left my mouth. "What level?" I blinked. The answer should have been immediate. It wasn't. I looked past her shoulder and saw stenciled text on the wall. L3/cognitive isolation access. Level 3. She nodded once. Good. Mike was still bracing himself against the sealed service door, breathing hard, listening for movement on the other side. "I don't hear it." "That doesn't mean anything," Mia said. She was crouched near me now with the waveform scanner in both hands. The screen was a mess of unstable peaks. "No," she added quietly. "It doesn't." I pushed myself up too fast, and the corridor tilted. Lisa caught my arm. "What happened?" Mike asked. I knew what he meant. Not the run, not the door. What I had seen. I opened my mouth and stopped. The memory was there, but it didn't come as an image. It came as pressure, like trying to remember a room too large to fit inside thought. "I looked at it," I said. Mia shut her eyes briefly, frustrated and afraid. "How long?" "A second." "That's enough," Lisa said. None of us liked how quickly she answered that. The maintenance corridor was narrower than the sectors above, all exposed conduit and concrete reinforcement, built for infrastructure rather than personnel. Thick bundles of cabling ran overhead behind mesh guards. Condensation gathered on the pipes and dropped in slow intervals to the floor grates below. At the far end of the passage stood a freight-style lift door beside a reinforced personnel entrance, stamped with the same label we had seen upstairs: cognitive isolation. Under it, someone had painted a second message in dark red emergency sealant. "If they ask you to remember, don't." Mike noticed it first. "This place is full of encouraging signage." Echo's voice came through a smaller wall speaker near the lift. Proceed into level 3. Remain in lit areas. Mike pointed at the speaker. Do you have any instructions that don't sound like a curse? Yes, Echo said. Do not allow Alexander Carter to isolate. A silence followed that one. I looked at the speaker. Why? There was a pause, as if Echo were deciding how much truth a damaged mind could safely carry. Because local interface attempts increase after visual acknowledgement. Mia stared at the scanner. So it saw him. No, Echo said. It recognized successful partial alignment. My skin went cold. Mike looked at me in a way he was trying hard to hide. Not disgust, not fear exactly, but a new calculation, a reclassification. Lisa stood and pulled one of the respirator masks from her pack, the one she had grabbed from the emergency box upstairs, and held it out to me. What is that supposed to do? Probably nothing, she said. But if there's aerosolized sedative, neurochemical trigger, fungal vector, literally anything physical layered into this place, I'd rather have one variable covered. I took the mask. The corridor pulsed softly with distant machinery. No voices came through the door behind us. No pounding, no scratching, no sign the duplicate wanted in badly enough to force the issue. That bothered me more than if it had. It was still patient, still certain. We moved down the passage together, Mike in front this time, Lisa beside me, Mia checking the scanner every few steps, like she was expecting it to tell her when the universe would stop making sense again. At the level 3 personnel door, the access panel was already green. Of course it was. Mike glanced back at us once, then shoved it open. The smell hit first. Not rot. Not exactly. It smelled clinical, refrigerated, and faintly sweet underneath, like flowers left too long in standing water. The room beyond opened into a broad containment ward, lit by soft recessed strips along the ceiling. Glass partitions divided the ward into observation bays, interview rooms, medical stations, and enclosed chambers with restraint chairs bolted to the floor. Unlike the rooms above, Level 3 had not been abandoned in haste. It had been organized and then left. Monitors were dark but clean. Equipment cabinets were sealed. Clipboards sat aligned at the ends of beds. Doors stood open at measured angles, as if the last people here had tried to preserve order against something that no longer respected it. Then Mike stopped so abruptly, Mia almost ran into him. At the far end of the ward, behind one of the glass partitions, someone was standing. Too thin, barefoot, wearing a white patient garment that hung loose from a body reduced almost to framework. My first thought was that it was a mannequin. My second was that I had been right the first time and my mind was no longer trustworthy. Then it moved. Slowly, with the hesitant precision of someone relearning what joints were for. Lisa whispered, "Oh God." There was another behind it, and another, not in cells, not restrained, just standing in different corners of the ward, silent and still, as if they had all stopped at different points in a task and never resumed. Human beings, or what had been left of them. They were not mutilated. That would have been easier to process. Their bodies were intact, but subtly wrong in ways that made the eye recoil. Spines, too, straight, heads angled half a degree off true, arms at rest with the fingers slightly spread, as though waiting to receive instructions. Their skin was pale and almost translucent under the lights. Not sickly, but thinned, as if the idea of skin had been preserved after the substance beneath it changed. And their faces looked unfinished, not missing features, just lacking ownership. Like each expression had been erased a fraction before completion and never redrawn. Mia's voice came out in a whisper. "Are they alive?" Echo answered. "Yes." Mike swore under his breath. "No, they are not." "Yes," Echo repeated. "Biological continuity persists." One of the figures turned its head toward us. It was a woman, maybe late 40s, with cropped grey hair and deep hollows at the base of her throat. Her eyes focused on me with unbearable slowness. Then she smiled, not because she was happy, because the muscles remembered the arrangement. New intake, she said. Her voice was dry and almost toneless, but human enough to flay me. The others in the ward began turning one by one, not toward the group, toward me. Lisa stepped in front of me instinctively, shielding my line of sight. "Don't look at them." "They're looking at him," Mike said. I noticed. Mia moved toward the nearest terminal station. "I need records." "Stay where you are," Echo said sharply. She froze. A second speaker came on farther inside the ward. "Former personnel and exposure survivors are housed within Level 3. They remain below full translation threshold." Mike turned toward the ceiling. "Below what?" "They were altered enough to lose stable self-reference, not altered enough to establish durable correspondence." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Lisa said it. "They're in between." "Yes," Echo said. The woman behind the glass took a step closer. "Don't say it like a kindness," she murmured. All four of us jerked. That had not come from the speakers. That had come from her. Mike moved backward. "Can they get out?" The woman's smile shifted slightly, becoming almost sympathetic. "We can go where the sentence allows," she said. "What sentence?" Mia whispered. The nearest male figure lifted a hand and touched the glass. His fingers were so thin, the knuckles looked jointed like carved wood. "The one it is writing with us." I felt the words like a physical cold. Echo spoke over him immediately. "Do not engage with resident subjects." But Lisa was already staring through the partition, horrified and fascinated at once. "Who are you?" the woman answered. "Dr. Naomi Pell, Cognitive Filtration Team." She tilted her head. "Or I was, before I could no longer keep memory inside." Her eyes remained on me. "You shouldn't have looked directly," she added. I felt that one in my teeth. Mike rounded on me. "What did you see?" "I don't know. That's not good enough." "I know." The woman behind the glass smiled again. "He can't tell you yet," she said. "The first sight doesn't become language immediately. It settles into him first." Lisa went white. "Settles?" Naomi Pell nodded once. "That's the dangerous part. Everyone fears the moment of contact. Really, it's the period after, when you begin making room for it without noticing." Mia had ignored Echo and reached the nearest terminal. She tapped keys, and to my shock, the system woke instantly, already on a patient registry. Photos lined the screen. Personnel badges, research leads, security officers, med techs. Almost every one had a second tab attached to it. Transferred to L3. She opened a file at random. A man in his 30s, clean military haircut, hard eyes in the intake photo. Beneath that, a later observation image taken in this very ward. He stood smiling at a blank wall with one hand raised as if reading something no one else could see. Status notes scrolled below. Retains name when prompted. Loses sequence of personal history when unwitnessed. Begins referring to self in plural during periods of signal activity. Demonstrates attraction to lower access shaft despite aversion conditioning. Requests descent during all lucid windows. Mia whispered, "They wanted to go lower." Naomi Pell answered from behind the glass. Of course, no one had asked her. That is where coherence is promised. The ward suddenly felt much larger than its dimensions, as though all its white-lit partitions were only temporary geometry erected inside a pressure far older than walls. A figure in the rear bay began humming, not a melody, a steady tonal pattern, almost like someone trying to remember how a machine sounded. Another joined in from somewhere to the right, then a third. Mike took a step back. "I don't like that." Echo's voice sharpened. "Signal synchronization beginning. Proceed to inner station immediately." The lights in the ward dimmed by a fraction. Naomi Pell's gaze never left me. "It already touched you," she said softly. "That means it can start building from both sides." Lisa grabbed my sleeve. "Alex, move!" But I couldn't stop looking at Naomi because something in her face had changed. Not expression, resolution. For a second, she seemed more complete than the others, the features tightening into clear humanity before fraying again. And in that brief, terrible clarity, she looked afraid for me. "I need to tell him something," she said, voice gaining urgency, "before the ward changes." Echo came down through every speaker at once. "No," Naomi ignored it. "When you start hearing people speak from rooms you haven't entered," she said, "don't follow the voice that knows what you're ashamed of. That one is never calling to warn you." The humming deepened. All around us, the glass partitions trembled. On Mia's terminal, every patient profile switched at once to a single flashing line of text. Descent, window reopening. Mike was already moving toward the inner station Echo had indicated. A sealed control room at the center of the ward with old manual shutters and analog override panels. "Now!" he shouted. We ran for it. Behind the glass, the in-between people were turning in unison, their unfinished faces lifting toward something beneath the floor. And as we crossed the ward, I heard it for the first time. Not through speakers, not from memory, from somewhere under level 3 itself. A vast, low call rising through metal and stone. Not loud, but intimate, like something enormous had leaned close to the bones of the facility and spoken directly into them. Every resident in the ward answered at once, not with words, with recognition. The sound that came from them was still human, technically. Human throats, human lungs, human mouths shaping a response. But there was no humanity left in what the response meant. We reached the inner station as the nearest glass partition cracked from top to bottom in a single clean line. Mike hit the control room door so hard with his shoulder that I thought he'd bounce off it. Instead, the lock flashed green and the seal released with a sharp hydraulic snap. We tumbled inside, almost on top of one another. Mia slammed her palm against the manual close switch, and the heavy door rolled shut just as the first partition in the ward exploded outward. Glass struck the outer metal with a fast, brittle rain. Then came the impact, not a full-body collision, more like several sets of hands, gentle at first, testing the barrier from the other side. The control room was circular, compact, and built like a bunker inside a bunker. 3 analog consoles wrapped around a central operations table, littered with printed schematics, old cassette storage, emergency binders, and a thick red handset connected by a coiled cable to the wall. Shutters covered the observation windows, though one had jammed halfway years ago, leaving a slit across the upper edge. Through it, I could see fragments of movement in the ward beyond, white garments, pale arms, faces turning in synchrony toward the room like flowers toward heat. Lisa locked the secondary latch while Mike dragged a steel equipment cabinet against the door. It wouldn't stop anything serious, but human beings will barricade a door even when the threat is no longer strictly physical. Mia went straight to the consoles. The room came alive under her hands. Old CRT displays flickered on one by one in green and amber. System diagrams crawled across the screens, sector labels, signal density maps, containment states, and at the very center of almost every display, one vertical line descending through the facility like a black needle. Translation shaft. Below it were the levels we already knew. Level 3, cognitive isolation level 4, bioadaptive analysis. Level 5, translation core. Level 6, redacted/Amiga interlock. Level 7, access null. Mike saw it too. That's the route. Lisa moved to the operations table and spread out a laminated emergency chart. Her face had changed. She was no longer reacting in fragments. She had entered the terrible calm of someone who sees the structure of the nightmare all at once. This room was built as an inner quarantine point, she said. If Level 3 destabilized, personnel could retreat here and decide whether to seal descent access or continue lower. Mike looked at her. Continue lower? Why would anyone continue lower? Before she answered, Echo spoke through the control room speakers. Because surface containment has failed before. Silence. Not because we had nothing to say, because every possible answer felt catastrophic. Mia's hands froze over the console. What did you say? Historical escape vectors have occurred, Echo replied. Incomplete interfaces occasionally reach exterior environments. Suppression and reacquisition outcomes vary. Mike laughed once, sick and stunned. Suppression and reacquisition? He looked toward the speaker. You mean it got out before? Yes. Outside the door, the soft testing impacts had become more organized, not pounding, patterned. 3 knocks, pause, 2, 3 again, as if the former staff in the ward were participating in a procedure they still half remembered. I pulled off the respirator mask and took a breath that didn't feel like it entered me properly. You said the surface route was unavailable because of propagation, I said. Yes. You meant it could follow us. Not in its entirety, Echo said. Only in viable human correspondences. My head throbbed. I knew dimly that this part mattered, that I needed to understand it clearly before the room got worse, before the pressure in my thoughts spread any further. The duplicate, I said, the voices, the people in the ward, those are all correspondences. Yes. Ways for it to exist closer to us. Yes. Mike turned away, rubbing both hands over his face. I need one sentence. One plain sentence. What is below this facility? No one answered for a beat. Then Echo did. A responsive structure that organizes itself through recognition. Lisa repeated it under her breath. Mia stared at the screens. That sounds like architecture. It is older than architecture, Echo said. It's alive. That distinction became unstable during early study. Outside the door, Naomi Pell's voice rose above the others, not shouting, calling like someone trying to be heard through thick glass. Do not let him go down alone! All 4 of us looked at the door. Mike swore quietly. She can hear us. Lisa didn't look surprised anymore. Level 3 isn't just a ward. It's an acoustic layer, a cognitive filter. Whatever's under the facility resonates through the people exposed to it. Naomi's voice came again. If he reaches the shaft by himself, it will close the sentence around him. Mike stared at the door, then at me. I knew the look. The awful arithmetic of survival had finally arrived. It had been waiting since the gate opened. Mia was scanning one of the lower-level maps now, jaw clenched. There's a freight elevator route through bioadaptive analysis down to level 5. Below that, no mapped corridors. Just vertical descent and mechanical interlocks. Lisa moved beside her. Can Echo seal it? I am sealing all non-essential routes now, Echo said. However, local duplication pressure increases faster than suppression capacity. Mike looked up sharply. In English. Echo answered without hesitation. The longer Alexander Carter remains within active range, the greater the probability of successful external carryover. There it was. The words no one wanted but all of us had already felt circling the room. Carryover. Not just contamination. Transport. Looked at the signal map. There was a bright cluster centered on Archive Annex C where the duplicate had manifested. Another, broader field spread through Level 3 where the in-between staff were synchronizing. And threaded through all of it, intersecting me like a pin through paper, was a thinner, brighter line descending toward the shaft below. Mia saw it too. Her voice came out strained. It has a lock on him. No one corrected her. Mike turned toward me slowly. Alex. He didn't know how to continue. That was fair. I didn't either. I should tell you I was brave in that moment. That I understood instantly what had to be done. The truth is uglier. My first feeling was not sacrifice. It was resentment. At the facility, at Echo, at the thing below, at the stupid, humiliating accuracy of it choosing me, because I had spent years turning doubt into obsession and obsession into identity. Some furious, childish part of me wanted to reject the whole structure simply, because it had read me so well. But beneath the anger was something colder. Recognition, not of the entity, of consequence. Lisa put both hands on the operations table and spoke without looking at me. "We need options," Echo answered. "Option 1, remain in level 3 until local duplications achieve sufficient coherence for multi-vector spread. Estimated survival probability, low. Surface contamination probability, unacceptable." "Option 2, Mike said. "Descend to translation core. Initiate hard severance through manual null protocol." Mia glanced up. "What does hard severance do?" "It interrupts ongoing correspondences by collapsing active interpretive bridges." Mike stared. "You really love saying horrible things as if they're technical." "Manual null protocol requires on-site confirmation at the shaft interface," Echo continued. "Remote execution was disabled after the 1997 event." Lisa read further into the emergency chart and went still. "What?" I asked. She looked at me now. "Manual confirmation means a living cognitive anchor has to be present at the interface when the null engages." Mike frowned. "Meaning?" She swallowed once. "Meaning someone exposed enough to be recognized by it." No one moved. No one breathed properly. Mia shook her head immediately. "No." Echo did not soften the answer. "Correct." Outside the door, the synchronized knocking stopped. The silence that replaced it was worse. Then the overhead shutter slit, darkened. Something had risen into view outside the control room window. A face. Mine. Only the duplicate was smiling more naturally now. Its features had improved. The skin sat better on the bones. The eyes aligned correctly. The camera harness on its chest now held a camera. My camera. It raised one hand and tapped lightly against the narrow exposed glass. One tap. Then it mouthed the words, "You see how fast I learn." Mike grabbed the flare baton from the emergency supplies and pointed it at the window like he meant to stab the face through reinforced glass. "Tell me we can kill it." "No," Echo said. The duplicate's mouth moved again. This time sound came through somewhere in the room itself, not from outside. "Don't let it lie to you," it said in my voice. "It doesn't want to save the world. It wants to keep the sentence unfinished." Lisa's head turned sharply. "Echo, is that true?" No answer. Mia looked at the screens, then at the duplicate, then up at the speaker. "Answer her." At last, Echo spoke. "Completion would result in irreversible restructuring of human perceptual continuity." Mike blinked. "What the hell does that mean?" Lisa answered in a whisper. "It means if the thing below fully translates into a form humanity can understand, it changes us permanently." The duplicate smiled wider at that. "Changes," it corrected. "Not destroys." Then it looked directly at me through the slit. "You've spent your entire life angry that reality was smaller than what people claimed it to be." Its hand pressed flat to the window. "I can fix that." Pain moved through my head again, sudden and precise, not from the words, from the impossible urge to believe that being chosen by horror was still a kind of significance. Lisa saw something in my face and stepped between me and the window. "Alex, don't." Mia came around the table and grabbed my shoulders hard enough to jolt me back into the room. "Listen to me. It wants your consent more than your body." That sentence cut through everything, because she was right. All night, every layer of this place had pushed toward the same shape. Not force first, but interpretation, seduction, recognition. A version of the story in which going lower would feel like destiny instead of consumption. Mike lowered the flare baton slowly. "So those are the choices," he said. "Go down and shut it off from the source, or stay up here and let it spread until it wears us into something portable." Naomi's voice came faintly through the door again. "Don't trust the duplicate, but don't trust delay either." The face at the window was gone now. Maybe moved. Maybe no longer needed there. I looked at the vertical shaft line on the central monitor. Level 5, Translation Core. Below it, Level 6, Redacted. Below that, Access Null. No mapped room at the bottom. Because the bottom wasn't a room, it was access. It was where the thing under the desert became understandable enough to enter. And Echo, for all its manipulation, all its curation and coldness, had been doing one desperate job all along, preventing successful understanding. Lisa reached the same conclusion at the same time. She straightened, and when she spoke, her voice was clear. The military didn't restrict Area 51 to hide what they discovered. No one interrupted her. They restricted it because every person who came close enough to understand it became a doorway. Mike closed his eyes. Mia's grip tightened on my shoulders, and I knew then what the story had really been from the beginning. Not a break-in, a retrieval. I looked from Mike to Mia to Lisa, 3 people I had dragged across the desert because I wanted the truth badly enough to mistake it for a right. The choice settled in me with the sick, clean certainty of a blade finding its sheath. "We go down," I said. Mia shook her head at once. "No, we all go down, or nobody does." Echo answered before I could. "All 4 will not survive shaft access." Mike stared at the speaker. "You really have excellent timing." Lisa was reading the emergency chart again. Her face had gone very still. Then she looked at me, and I saw the decision arrive in her eyes a fraction before she spoke. "No," she said softly. "Alex doesn't go alone." The route to the lower shaft began beneath the control room. Mia found it hidden under a recessed floor panel keyed to an old analog release, the kind of mechanism designed long before the facility trusted digital systems to behave around the signal. When the hatch opened, a narrow maintenance stair dropped into darkness, wrapped around a central cable column that vibrated with a low, steady current. No one spoke for the first 30 seconds of the descent. Above us, Level 3 continued to shift and answer whatever called from below. We could still hear it through the metal, glass breaking, distant impacts, the layered human tones of people no longer fully human, trying to synchronize around a sentence none of us were built to survive. Below us, the air grew warmer. Not desert heat, not machine heat. A deep subterranean warmth, like we were moving toward a buried body rather than a reactor. The stairs ended at Level 4, Bioadaptive Analysis. The door at the landing was already open. Inside, the corridor walls were lined with sealed observation tanks, surgical stations, and suspended frames that had once held things I will never be able to describe responsibly, because even now I cannot tell where biology ended and interpretation began. Some chambers were empty, others contained residues, sloughed tissue, black mineral growth, strings of dried fluid over restraint brackets. On one wall, a row of X-rays hung under dead light panels. None of the skeletons were fully human. None were fully not. Mike looked once and kept walking. Lisa paused only long enough to read a torn placard, half hanging from a glass door. Adaptive host trials terminated. Cognitive collapse. Proceeds. Stable transfer. That's what the hybrids were, Mia said quietly. Not invasion, compatibility attempts. No one disagreed. At the end of Level 4, the freight elevator waited open, cage doors parted. Echo had already called it for us. The control panel inside held only 3 functioning buttons: L5, Translation Core; L6, Omega Interlock Manual Null Authorization. Mike stared at that last one. They built the kill switch into the elevator. Lisa read the smaller text beneath it. Authorization requires on-site cognitive match. There it was again. The same truth in cleaner language. Someone recognized by the thing below had to be there when the null triggered. Mia stepped into the elevator first, then turned before the rest of us entered. "We are not doing this like a movie," she said. "No secret sacrifices. No one makes a decision alone." Her eyes were wet, but steady. Mike nodded immediately. Lisa did too. I said nothing, which meant they all understood before I did. The descent to level 5 took too long, not in seconds, in sensation. The elevator moved slowly through the shaft, and with every meter lower, the walls began to change. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, concrete seams shifting, support struts misaligning. But no, the architecture itself was becoming less infrastructural and more responsive, as if the lower we went, the less the facility could impose its own geometry on whatever had always existed here. Metal became stone in places. Stone became something that only resembled stone while you looked straight at it. Cables vanished into black surfaces that didn't reflect the cage light. The hum in the shaft turned into something with rhythm, not language. Expectation. By the time the elevator stopped, I was bleeding lightly from one nostril. Mia noticed and went pale. Alex. I know. The doors opened. Translation Core was not a room. It was a platform built around absence. A circular deck of steel and concrete clung to the inner wall of an immense vertical void that descended beyond sight. Thick support braces had been driven into the surrounding black material, but they looked decorative, like nails hammered into the edge of a storm. At this platform's center stood a control pillar with analog switches, biometric contacts, and a red-covered lever labeled Null Interface. Across from it, a narrow bridge extended over the void to a solitary standing frame at the far side, half gantry, half altar, fitted with restraints, electrodes, and a headset ring suspended above where a human skull would rest. Mike whispered, "That's the confirmation point." Echo's voice carried through hidden speakers, but here it sounded weaker, stretched thin by the space around it. Yes. Mia stepped to the platform railing and looked down. Then she recoiled instantly. "It's moving." Lisa did not go to the edge. She was looking instead at the black vertical surfaces below the platform, where faint shapes appeared, only if you let your gaze drift. Not carvings, not machinery, patterns of response. As if generations of human attempts to define what this place was had left impressions on it, and the structure had kept each failed act of understanding like layers of skin. I felt suddenly, terribly certain that if the world ever fully understood this place, it would no longer be the world. The duplicate appeared on the far bridge. No sound of approach, no opening door. It was simply there, standing between us and the confirmation frame with my face lit by the weak industrial lamps around the shaft. Only now it was nearly perfect. Camera on the chest harness. Jacket seams correct. Even the small scar under my chin from when I was 12. It smiled at me with heartbreaking familiarity. "You made it," it said. Mike raised the flare baton. "Back away." The duplicate looked at him kindly, like you might look at a child interrupting surgery. Then it addressed all of us. "This is the real reason access was restricted," it said. "Not because a government found something too dangerous to reveal. Because they realized revelation itself was the opening." Its gaze shifted to the void beneath us. When enough minds approach the same unknowable shape, the shape approaches back. Echo cut in, harsh and strained. "Do not engage. Proceed with null." The duplicate's expression sharpened. "It's afraid, because it was built from refusal. It is human defense crystallized into process. A filter made of your species' panic. It has done nothing for 70 years, except teach reality to remain smaller than it is." Lisa looked toward the control pillar, then the bridge, then me. The arithmetic was already in her eyes. "There's no remote trigger, is there?" "No," Echo said. The duplicate spread my hands. "Listen to how it frames this. Null, containment, suppression. The military never understood what it was guarding. They called your change corruption because they worshipped consistency." Then its voice softened, became intimately mine again. "Alex, You wanted proof the world was wider. This is that proof. For one sickening moment, the whole platform leaned toward its logic. That was the danger. Not that it sounded monstrous, that it sounded meaningful. Mia stepped in front of me. "No," she said. "You don't get to turn obsession into destiny." The duplicate studied her with real interest. Then it smiled and spoke in her father's voice. "Mia." She folded instantly, not physically, but inwardly. The same microsecond collapse I had felt when it used my mother. Mike caught her before she staggered. Lisa swore and moved toward the control pillar. The duplicate turned to intercept. Echo flooded the shaft with the tone again. This time, it barely worked. The duplicate flinched, yes, but only half a step, like the suppression field had become an annoyance rather than a barrier. "Too slow," it said. Outside the elevator behind us, alarms suddenly began to sound throughout the lower levels. Echo spoke over them. "Level 3 breach. Exterior progression probability increasing." Mike looked from the bridge to the lever, to me. No more time. No more better option. Lisa moved first. Not toward the control pillar, toward me. She grabbed my jacket with both hands and forced me to meet her eyes. "Listen to me," she said. I knew immediately what she had decided, and I think she saw that in my face because for 1 second, her expression broke. Not into fear, into grief. "You're the match," she said. "But you're also the path out if you survive this. Alex, Mike, and Mia can still get the footage, the files, the proof. If the truth dies here, then all of this becomes another sealed rumor." "No," I said. "Yes." The duplicate started across the bridge. Mike rushed to block, flare baton igniting in a white arc that filled the shaft with savage light. For one glorious second, the duplicate lost coherence completely. My body shapes split apart into layered human approximations, and behind them something vast and black unfolded like thought, made architectural. Mia screamed. Mike drove the burning baton into its chest. The duplicate staggered backward, not from heat but from interruption, identity breaking across its face like cracked glass. Lisa shoved me toward the control pillar. "Do it!" I stumbled against the console. The red cover over the lever was warm, too warm, as if someone had just touched it. Across the bridge, the duplicate recovered with terrifying speed. Mike would not hold it long. Mia was dragging him back, scanner shrieking, tears on her face. Echo's tone was failing. The shaft below was calling harder now, and from the dark came a pressure so immense it felt like the void itself had leaned upward to witness the choice. Lisa turned and ran across the bridge. Not away, toward the confirmation frame. For one stunned second, none of us understood. Then Echo did. "Lisa Grant, stop!" She did not. The duplicate saw her too late. She slipped past it while its form was still. Reassembling, reached the standing frame and slammed her hands onto the biometric contacts. The headset ring descended around her skull with a mechanical click. I shouted her name. She looked back at us once, and in that look, I understood everything she had seen long before the rest of us. History, myth, secrecy, sacrilege, the whole human habit of prying open meaning and calling the wound enlightenment. She was the only one among us who had always treated knowledge as something that could demand a price. "Alex," she said, voice shaking now. "Pull it." The duplicate lunged for her. I yanked the lever. The world did not explode. It translated in reverse. Every light in the shaft went black except the standing frame around Lisa, which ignited in a white column so bright it turned the duplicate transparent. For a fraction of a second, I saw both its layers at once, my face reaching toward her, and behind it that impossible reciprocal vastness, all distance and hunger and patient answer. Then the null engaged. The sound it made was not loud. It was subtraction, the removal of a connection so fundamental that reality around it shuddered with the effort of becoming smaller again. The duplicate convulsed. Its body collapsed inward through impossible geometries, my features peeling away like paper from vacuum, the camera harness dropping empty to the bridge. The black space below the platform rippled once, as if a mind too large to fit the shaft had recoiled from a closing door. Lisa screamed. Not long, just once. And then the standing frame fused with light so intense her silhouette vanished inside it. Mia was sobbing. Mike dragged me bodily toward the elevator as sparks burst from every console on the platform. Echo's voice came shredded through the alarms. Null confirmed. Local correspondence is collapsing. Immediate evacuation required. I'm not leaving her, I shouted. But the bridge to the frame was gone, not destroyed. Gone. Where it had extended over the shaft, there was now only open, dark and drifting white ash that might have been dust, might have been burnt circuitry, might have been all that remained of a choice the facility itself would never be allowed to remember correctly. Mike hit the elevator recall. The cage doors opened. Mia grabbed my face with both hands. Alex, she said, forcing me to focus. Lisa made the decision. Not you. Move. So we moved. The ride up was chaos. Alarms, flickering lights, levels sealing and unsealing around us, as Echo rerouted what remained of containment. By the time we reached the surface access ramp, the facility felt different. Smaller. Injured. Like some enormous pressure had withdrawn from its center and left all the human-built layers sagging inward around the absence. The outer gate was already open. Dawn was beginning over the desert, a thin grey line in the east. We ran until the base was behind us, then farther still, until the car came into view between the rocks, where we'd hidden it at the start of the night. Only when the engine turned over did I realize I was still holding the camera, still recording. Back in civilization, we released everything. The footage, the archived documents, the audio, the names, Project Echo, Level 3, the exposure reports, the proof that Area 51 had not restricted access to hide aliens, aircraft, or weapons. It had restricted access because something under the desert learned people through curiosity, and every person who came close enough to understand it became a possible doorway. That was the real reason. Not secrecy, containment. Most people called the material fake. The rest called it the greatest leak in history. A week later, Mia received the first message. No sender, no attached file, just plain text on a blank screen. Distance is decorative. Mike got one the same night. Then me. I was alone when mine arrived. Laptop open, apartment dark, city lights reflecting in the window behind the screen. The message appeared one word at a time, as if being typed from very far away. You still think Lisa stayed behind? I did not touch the keyboard. A second line appeared. That was only the first place she learned to stand. I shut the laptop. It did not matter, because from the dark hallway outside my apartment, in a voice that was not hers, but had learned enough of her to be cruel, I heard Lisa say, Alex, don't let it teach you the ending for me. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. And remember, some secrets aren't hidden to protect them, they're hidden to protect us.